Yeah.
They've got another. This will be like the third in a row Revolver World Title match between the Rascals, who are really good. It's Zachary Wentz used to wrestle for WWE.
Ooh, yeah.
Trey Miguel wrestles. He's the X Division Championship for Impact right now. And they're going to be going up Ace Austin and Chris Bay, who are Bullet Club members.
Yeah.
Then Josh Alexander versus Brian Keith. Josh Alexander's Impact World Champion.
Hell yeah.
Miyu Yamashita versus Ali Catch, which is one of the ones that I'm really excited to see.
Mm-hmm.
You'll fall in love with Ali Catch.
I can't wait.
Yeah, it'll be very similar to you and Ruby Soho.
Oh, it'll be just love at first sight. Is that what it'll be?
Yeah.
Ready for that.
They're having Hoss Fight 3-way dance. It's going to be the biggest boys. They've got Brian Cage from. Have you ever seen Brian Cage?
No, hold on. I'm looking up the Revolver.
He's massive. Crash Jackson, who's too much. He's a whole lot of dude, and Fulton, who's like a big Viking guy.
Oh, dude, hell yeah!
And there's going to be a married tag team match with Steve Macklin and Diona Barrazzo versus Speedball Mike Bailey and Veda Scott. And so it's going to be married couples. That'll be fun.
That's a fun match. That sounds like a fun match.
Speedball's really cool.
He's like him already. He's got the name of a one of my favorite Marvel heroes.
And he does a lot of kicks.
Oh, cool. Okay.
His whole thing is kind of like karate martial artist.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. I'm looking at the lineup right now. Yeah, the married oh man, those are some huge dudes.
Yeah. Fulton's massive.
I
saw him at the show back in February, and he's a giant.
My God.
I got to see Josh Alexander wrestle Aishi from New Japan, who the Stone Pitbull, and that was a great match.
Oh,
like this is just they continue to put on amazing every time I've gone to see Revolver, they put on amazing shows, and the fact that you can get a second row seat for $40.
Hell yeah, I'm way down for that.
Yeah. First row, I wanted to do first row, but they were already sold out. They're only $60.
That's not bad for first row.
Yeah, and especially like some of these names, like some of the names that they can get are huge. Mm-hmm. Like John Moxley hosted the last one.
Yeah, John Moxley's fucking huge.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited to take you to see this one. It's going to be a blast.
I am very excited to see it. 100%. I'm always, and I definitely want to try to go into more of those and some future greats, because again, they do every single Friday.
Yeah, I want to see more like local promotions too.
Yeah.
Revolver is always going to be like special to me because it's like I've seen them a couple of times. I'm going to keep seeing they come to Dayton like every other month right now, it seems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. I'm partial to I want to see that, and I'm of course partial to FGW because my friend Ryan, who I used to work with, he's one of their tag teams. He's in one of their tag teams.
We'll have to go down there and see them some night soon.
Yeah, and he's the guy who his friend runs that wrestling school that I've looked at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're gonna do it. We're becoming wrestlers. We're gonna become pro wrestling stars.
We might become wrestlers. Who fucking knows?
The Cryptid Boys.
Danhausen can do it. He's spooky. Danhausen did it. He's spooky.
Anyways, that's been a long
warm up.
It's because it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Sorry, everybody. I got arrested for joke crimes. After the mommy milker incident, which technically I shouldn't even said that. I'm on probation.
Oh no! You just broke probation now.
So that I might get arrested again.
Damn it!
No, it was this perfect storm of you moved.
Yes.
I got sick for like 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also been house hunting.
Yeah. So all of a sudden
a month goes by, 2 months or something.
Yeah, it was just this massive storm of life that just kept happening. And it's like, because as soon as I was like, okay, I'm in a spot now in the house where I could record again. Like, nope, I'm still sick.
Yeah,
shit.
I was sick it wasn't COVID, but it was a cold that refused to go away.
I've had those. We've all had those.
And then I've been house hunting for basically like the last 3 months since December, but it's And so that just continues to be time consuming and exhausting. But we're
Tell
back.
me about it. We're back.
We're going to continue to be back. We will hopefully not have another surprise month-long hiatus.
Hopefully not. We will do our absolute best.
But yeah, we're going to continue telling you some spooky stories and maybe some not so spooky stories. We'll see.
And we'll see.
Today might actually be a not so spooky story.
But it's really going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting story nonetheless. It's going to be very different.
It's a story that I wouldn't even call it like an obscure local legend or anything like that. It is a fairly well-known character.
Yeah.
But people think they know who he is, and then they think he know who he actually is. But then there's a whole other layer behind who they think he is, who he really is.
Okay.
Anyways, I'm talking about Johnny Appleseed.
God, Johnny. See, now, I don't know about for any of you, for anybody listening, I want you to hear that name, and then I remember just like picture your head, because what I'm picturing in my head when I hear Johnny Appleseed is I picture tall guy for some reason he's tall and lanky in my head, and he's wearing, of course, a pot on his head, and he is wearing he's just overalls. He's not wearing a shirt. He's just wearing overalls. That's honestly it. Who I picture. He's just overalls and a hat.
It's very, very interesting. So when you're in elementary school, you usually learn about Johnny Appleseed at some point in time.
Yeah.
And it's usually you got a picture book, and the character you just described features heavily in it, and he's just tossing apple seeds everywhere.
Yeah.
And nobody really you never get a good explanation as to why he's doing that.
No, you never did.
He wants everybody to be healthy. Is kind of like the vague.
That's how they vaguely structured it. It was just you were taught him when you're taught American history, and he comes up in the same conversation as Daniel Boone sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Then he's also sometimes mentioned in the same breath as an obviously fictional character like Paul Bunyan.
Yeah, he is a weird. Yeah, Daniel Boone and David Crockett are good analogs because they're real people. They're historical figures who straddle the tall tale historical divide.
Yeah.
And I think maybe even more so Johnny Appleseed ends up kind of falling a little more into the tall tale world just because he's such a vague figure. And he's kind of difficult to understand, partially because we don't have a lot of information about him. We do have some, and some first-hand accounts.
Okay,
but cool. It's not because he wasn't the same political and pioneering figure that Crockett and Boone were. But yeah, so you're in elementary school, and yeah, you learn about pan on the head, doesn't have any shoes, and then usually the things that I kind of forgot was a vegetarian and the pacifist. It's usually another one of the things. I
forgot about that.
Apparently there's one story about him killing a snake that bit him, and he felt really sad.
I'd forgotten about that. I actually never heard the snake bit. If I did, I forgot about it.
Yeah, he becomes almost this kind of American saint.
Yeah,
where he's just, which is also a really interesting dichotomy between you have Daniel Boone and Crockett, who are violent. They are the tools of colonization. They are out there fighting the indigenous people, and that's lauded for their manliness. And then you get Johnny Appleseed, who's the same time period, literally the exact same time period.
Right, exactly.
And honestly, one of the things that really surprised me was a lot of the myth of Johnny Appleseed isn't super far removed from the reality.
Okay.
There are some exaggerations and some aspects of him that get vagued, I think maybe intentionally, and we'll go into that as we talk more about him. But a lot of stuff the saucepan on the head was real. That wasn't a full-blown saucepan, it was a tin hat. Okay,
so kind of walking around like he's the Tin Man from
but
Oz?
it was kind of a I wasn't able to get a good description of if it was pointed or if it was a flat cap, but it was a tin hat, and he'd use it as a saucepan. He would use it to, like, he would wear it as, it was a functional hat. It was a hat, but then he would use it to cook things in. A lot of the early stories said that he did not wear shoes very often.
Okay, I got that part right.
He would have like a pair of moccasins sometimes for when it was like absolutely necessary.
Yeah,
but he wouldn't wear. And yeah, they were like, all of the firsthand descriptions of him are kind of like, yeah, his clothing is falling off because he just doesn't have like a strong interest in worldly possessions. Now, some of the things that also kind of get connected to him with like being friends of the Native Americans, maybe a little less so. One of the ones that when you're in elementary school, like public school, they kind of brush over this stuff. But when you look up stuff about Johnny Appleseed, kind of outside of that context, you learn that he's very religious and always had a Bible.
Oh.
However,
yeah, that got left out.
It's really funny to me now that I know more about him. Where when people like, he's like, oh yeah, he's a virtuous American Christian. I'm like, oh, hold on to your pants, boys. It's gonna get weird.
Oh, okay, yeah. They conveniently left the Bible part out of any of the Johnny Appleseed lore that I learned when I was in elementary school.
Maybe for a good reason beyond just like separation of church and state, because people who are like trying to claim him as like some kind of Christian missionary, he is in one sense, but in another sense, we'll get into it.
Okay, yeah, let's go.
And so I am kind of sad we are recording this remotely.
I am also sad.
For this episode, today's beer in my backyard, I was hoping to find something that would be very kind of the time period, but I got a cider, appropriately enough. I've got Aspal Grand Cru cider, spelled with a Y. It's British.
Oh, with a Y.
Yeah. It's described as a rustic medium dry cider with delicious fruits and floral notes.
That sounds delicious. I'm having water. I'm having water.
So the Aspal cider, it is what I'd call medium dry, which I like. I used to love ciders, and then they got really sweet.
Yeah, they did.
And I just couldn't
do them anymore.
I couldn't do it anymore. But this is a nice dry cider. Dry ciders are starting to come back, even like an American cideries. Like their dry cider is starting to come back.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, which I appreciate, because yeah, every cider is just like basically like apple juice now, and I'm just like, oh
my god, no, I agree. I can't as now, because I drink exclusively like just beer now, basically, like when I'm trying to have a good time or when I'm trying to have a drink, and going back to a cider, like just an Angry Orchard, like, because that's just like the standard, right? Going back to that, I'm like, I used to like, it's just like hurts my mouth. I'm like, I used to drink this.
Yeah, no, this is
really sweet.
I've been the exact same way, but that's what this one's actually. It's got like a little bit of sweetness because it's a cider. Ciders are going to be a little sweeter.
Yeah,
but honestly, I really enjoy this and would probably buy more bottles of it. Like if I was doing, especially for like summer or fall. Like it's a good. That's why I like ciders as like I mowed the lawn drink.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
It's kind of like pilsners are the same way. Like a pilsner's like I just mowed the lawn. I want something nice and light and refreshing, and this falls right in there. It's like, and honestly, like it'd be a good dinner cider too. Like I would eat that. I don't know what I'd drink that with. It recommends.
I'm not good at pairing things.
Pair with Moroccan tangines, sausage and mash, and rich pasta dishes.
That sounds extremely English.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah, I am very, very pleased with this.
I'm glad. Okay. Yeah, apple cider.
So let's get into Johnny Appleseed, whose real last name, Johnny Chapman.
His name was Johnny Chapman?
Yep.
He does not sound like a Chapman.
It is weird because it's another part of the you forget he's real. Yeah. A lot of people don't think he's real. Like they thought he's just somebody that was made up.
I didn't think he was real for a while. Hell, I didn't think there was a point in time where I didn't think Christopher Columbus was real.
I still don't think he's real. I think he's propaganda. He's
Italian
propaganda.
Italian propaganda.
Get us to buy more meatballs.
Not Christopher Columbus. He didn't discover shit.
That's also true.
Yeah, he didn't discover shit.
Horrible human being.
Immensely horrible.
But yeah, so Johnny Appleseed is kind of kind of like we were just talking about a little bit earlier. He is like both in the Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett category, but also ends up in the Paul Bunyan, Pecos Bill category.
Yeah. Extremely.
So the Chapman family goes all the way back to 1638. So not like Mayflower time, but early family. His John's great grandfather, I might be missing a great there, was Edward Chapman. He was a Puritan who came over to the Americas in 1638. He settled in Ipswich, which is north of Boston. And he was a miller back in England, which is a skilled profession. That was considered a skilled trade. However, in America, he took up farming, which was actually kind of, if you were living in England at the time, if you were primarily a farmer, that was very low class.
Oh, okay.
But in America at this point in time, especially in New England and the Boston colony, farming was the gentleman's profession, partially because there were two kind of requirements to be considered a free man and to be part of the bigger Puritan church, to be able to have voting rights and things like that. One was owning land, was owning and working land. Yeah. The other was to be deemed a saint by the church officials.
I feel like one of those is harder than the other.
The land side seems like it was a little harder. Just
the land side seems super hard. I bet you could fake being a saint. I bet you could have a con to be a saint.
Well, that was largely a popularity contest.
Yeah, exactly.
It was because the Puritans were Calvinists.
Yeah.
And they believed in it was predestination. They believed that basically it was already decided who's going to go to heaven and who's going to go to hell.
Sounds like something right now. What? Oh no.
Nothing's new. Time's a flat circle.
Time's a flat circle.
A saint was somebody who was going to go to heaven. Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was basically, and so saints could recognize other saints was kind of the gist of it. Was so the church elders who have already been determined to be saints.
Of course.
They could tell, they would be like, oh yeah, you're a saint. Oh no, you're not a saint. You're going to hell. Sorry. And that also means you can't vote.
Oh, oopsie daisy. Guess, it's out of my hands. It's in God's hands. Oops. Can't do any of that.
Absolutely why? It's kind of, and it has kind of stuck in the American, Calvinism stuck in the American mindset.
Yeah, not in the exact same sense, but in a different flavor.
Yeah,
it's just a different flavor now.
Yeah, it's like the Puritan mindset has never completely gone away, even if we've lost some of the theology.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So Edward Chapman was trying very hard to become a free man.
Okay,
and so that kind of ends up driving a lot of the family dynamic throughout the ages. Was this, especially the land side of it, because the family keeps having issues getting land, which when we get to Johnny Chapman, that becomes a factor in the way he acts and his kind of life mission. So a little bit of background about this space, because of course the Puritans weren't the first people there. This is this area of the Northeast, what we call New England now, was called the Agawam region. Which is, I think it's Algonquin word it's called fish curing place.
Okay.
So it was kind of a literal description of this is what we do when we're here. It was populated by the Sagamore tribe, who, contrary to a lot of what you end up hearing in elementary school, it's the Native Americans were settled, they didn't cultivate land. Actually, especially in the East, heavily cultivated. The forests were super regulated. They had very specific ways about how they would build paths and let trees go. Which is, it's Australia, not not America, but I always loved the learning about the English going to settle Australia and just being like, look at this amazing garden world that just grew here magically by God. when it was like centuries of cultivation by the Aborigines. Like, it's just an absolutely wild thing to me.
So just the mindsets of just sometimes sometimes I like to say the audacity of white people, and it's that just has never gone away. It just comes in different flavors now, but just like showing up on a place and you're just like, whoa, look at all this amazing work that God did. And then over is the indigenous people of that area going, no, actually that was us.
Nowadays it's just aliens.
God that you're talking about. Now they just say it's aliens.
Yeah. Which it's it's that meme of the just because white people didn't do it doesn't mean it was aliens.
Yeah, just because white people couldn't think how to do it doesn't mean it was an alien thing.
because I'm a pedantic historian philosopher, they did build Stonehenge.
Yeah.
There's that kind of stuff, but at the same time, but there are also people who say Stonehenge was aliens. So
there's obviously we don't know. It's like, oh, whoa, Stonehenge is so mysterious, and yes, it is. But like the reason it's mysterious is because they did a bunch of killing of indigenous and of traditional things. They just wiped the slate clean, pretending it never happened. That's why it's so mysterious. We just don't know because everything was burned, destroyed.
It was even like it was pre-Celtic.
Exactly.
Like, so it was way, way back there. So we, like,
that wasn't written down at all. Like, they just
there was no written language,
down.
and then the people who actually built it died out and were conquered by the Celts.
Exactly.
And then the Romans showed up and just killed everything.
Yeah. So it's not like aliens built it. It's not like that. It's just that we literally don't know what happened because the previous guys didn't write it down, and then everybody after that just laid waste to fucking everything.
I'm going to take a controversial stance and just say the guy who said it was Merlin was right.
You know what?
It was Merlin.
That claim. It was Merlin. We don't know if Johnny Appleseed's real. Merlin's real.
Merlin might be real. Or at least there are some historical figures who link up very cleanly with him.
Cool.
But yeah, so I'm also going to say Merlin was Johnny Appleseed.
Okay. Yeah.
Sticking that right here. I don't have any evidence for this, but. They're also aliens.
It's like the Doctor. Maybe. It's like the Doctor. William Shakespeare was Merlin.
So contrary to what you might be taught in elementary school, the indigenous population of the Americas actually did spend a lot of time cultivating. However, they were very smart about how they would cultivate and how they would farm. So the Sagamore tribe was big on their big things were corn, beans, and squash.
Mm-hmm.
However, they would rotate land, like massive plots of land, and sometimes leave them fallow for 30 years, just because that was a way of keeping everything healthy.
Whoa, cool.
And they wouldn't stay in one place. There was there was like the fish curing place, but there's also like the corn growing place would be the name of another region, and they would just the fishing place or the hunting place. And so they would move around based on the season to what was most suited for that area.
Okay.
So it was, of course, the colonizers, however, who brought the first settled agriculture, where you're staying in one place and basically draining the ground dry.
Yeah.
And first world apples are the first old world apples. So what we would recognize as apples nowadays. There were crab apples and similar species growing in America before then. But kind of what we recognize as an apple came over with... his name was William Blackstone in Boston, and I want to know more about this guy because apparently he would ride a bull through Boston, and hand out flowers.
What? Wait, what?
I want to know more about this guy.
Okay. I know that the American school system is flawed. Obviously, that this entire episode is just us basically tearing it down. And yeah, we learn about a cool guy with a pot on his head that threw apple seeds everywhere. But like, How did you not? Why didn't I know until now that there was a dude who rode a fucking bull around and just threw flowers at people? That's dope. Honestly, that's fun.
I'm ready for my Tall Tales cinematic universe where we have Johnny Appleseed and William Blackston like team up to fight like Pecos Bill.
You seen Tall Tales? But you knew there was a Disney did a movie about that, right?
Oh yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about. It's time for them to resurrect that property.
Yeah, just do Tall Tales again. That one that's a fun movie. Just do that again. Like, just do another MCU, but just do it with Tall Tales. It's fun. Do it.
So honestly, I already know the villain.
Who's the villain?
I know who the villain is. So, okay, so another major aspect of kind of once you get to learn more about Johnny Appleseed, and he's throwing seeds, which is weird.
It's a little weird
because a lot of apple seeds are very uncontrollable. You don't know what you're going to get. So you could get a Granny Smith apple seed, plant that in the ground. The tree that grows be nothing like like a Granny Smith.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
So what they usually do to control what's going to grow is they do what they call grafting, which they take basically a branch from the tree and then from a hardier tree. So it might not even be the same species, like the same apple type, but it would be like maybe a very hardy tree. They'll take a root from that and they'll graft them together.
When you say graft, like what do you mean? Like
for lack of a better term, glue or so.
Okay.
They'll get them to basically grow into each other and plant that. And it's called, it's a cultivar, and it will grow into the tree. And that's how they maintain apple varieties.
Plants are weird.
It is very weird. Imagine if people could do that.
Oh my god. Ugh.
Like, just
I don't know.
Especially like you could do that to grow another person.
Yeah, I don't know.
Take my foot and then graft it on, like graft a baby onto it. And it grows into a new Ian, like, or something. Yeah, so seed apples, usually tart, bitter, generally used for cider making.
Okay, yeah. I love Granny Smith apples.
Yeah, and then
my favorite.
To get a Granny Smith, you have to do the grafting.
Yeah, you got to do the gluing of the root to get the Granny Smith.
That's actually just a very common way of growing, especially fruit nowadays. It's like you really kind of only like. I got a friend so angry at this, but I said you've only had one banana because all bananas are all genetically identical to each other because because you can't plant a banana.
No, you
can't. We don't have seed bananas anymore, and so they cut off a part of the banana plant that, like graft it, and grow that. So like they're all genetically set. They're all exactly the same, and so you've only had one banana. You've had that one banana multiple times, but it's only ever been one.
I don't even like bananas that much.
Well, there's that whole meme about bananas don't taste like banana candy.
They don't,
because
they don't.
The banana candy banana died out.
No shit.
Because of the same issue that we have right now is they were all genetically the same.
Whoa.
And then there was some kind of blight, a bug or fungus or something like that, wiped out basically the entire like species of that type of banana. And so the new banana that we have now doesn't taste anything like it.
So the Laffy Taffy banana flavor, not the banana that you're gonna get, not the same banana as the supermarket banana.
That is a no longer commercially viable banana flavor.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's weird. Also, don't have like monocrops that are susceptible to blight and stuff like that.
Yeah,
just
also
a little bit of
that.
advice.
Is that something I can blame capitalism for? Because I'll do it.
100%.
Okay, cool. Fuck 100%. Capitalism for that. Okay, cool. Yay.
So we're moving apple. So we've got apple trees in the New World, largely coming from seeds, and a lot of that is economic because moving grafted trees from England to America they take up a lot of space. They probably won't survive. So it's just easier to plant seeds from apples and kind of start from the beginning.
Okay.
Plant apples from seeds and start from the beginning. And because seed apples are very popular for cider making, that kind of becomes the new drink. the traditional cereal grains that were used to make beer weren't growing very well in America. So the English barley and wheat. And this is tying back all the way 30 minutes ago when I said I know the villain of the Tall Tales cinematic universe. Oh
yeah, we're here. We're back here now.
So you have this figure in England, this folklore figure, John Barleycorn.
Oh my god!
And he is. It is basically the anthropomorphized. Thank you. Human of who is like the human version of all of these cereal crops that go into making beer.
Okay.
And there's some great songs. I'll hunt them down and send them to you. There's this entire like folk tradition of murder ballads that are about making beer.
Okay.
It'll be like the classic one is like 3 men came out of the West and they swore a solemn oath that John Barleycorn must die.
Oh man, hold on. I am listening. I'm going to see if there's any images of John Barleycorn.
John Barleycorn.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like they all have like these murder ballads that are just about planting and harvesting barley to make beer. But yeah, John Barleycorn is going to be, he's kind of like the folklore antithesis of Johnny Appleseed. And so he's Johnny Appleseed's nemesis in the Tall Tales cinematic universe.
He's his arch enemy.
Yeah.
Seeing if there's any like art of him. There is not. That is disappointing. That's super disappointing.
But yeah, I'll send you some of the songs and I'll link them in the show notes for this episode because there are some like they're good murder ballads, but then you realize it's just about making beer, which makes it even better.
Sounds cool. Yeah, I'm into I've gotten slowly into what's being called like murder folk country or outlaw country. It's like goth country.
Yeah,
I've started getting into that, and that is dope.
Yeah, I'll send you. I have an entire playlist that is just like murder ballads and like chaos, like it's like country folk murder ballads and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like super dark and it's dope. I like that.
Yeah,
like my country, like I like my coffee dark.
That's kind of like so we've got apples are in the zeitgeist of America from a very early age, and because the beer cereals don't grow well here yet, especially like in New England, the land is just not set up for them. Apples grow very well though, and it's the kind of apples that you want to use for cider making. So cider becomes like the drink of choice for John Chapman's family and the people around him. So we go from great-great-grandpa Chapman, Edward Chapman, couple generations down to Nathaniel Chapman, who is the father of Jonathan Chapman. He moved out of the Ipswich region to Leominster in 1770, married Elizabeth Simmons, who's the daughter of one of the big families, and he was able to get some land, finally.
Oh, well, look at that. On it.
But technically it wasn't his land, it was his wife's family's land.
So
he's still not considered a free man. Yeah. In 1772, they have a daughter named Elizabeth. Okay. And then 1774, John was born.
Okay.
1774. So there's this thing called the War of Independence or the Revolutionary War.
Thing.
Some people might have heard about it. Kind of small beans.
Small skirmish.
So Daddy Nate, leaves his family to go fight in the war. He's actually at Bunker Hill, which is one of the first big battles.
Oh, yeah.
And while Dad's out fighting, Mom dies of tuberculosis. 1776.
Damn.
She saw what was coming, and she's like, "I'm out."
She just was like, "I'm out."
And she wrote a farewell letter to her husband. Basically, she knew she was dying.
Oh, that's romantic.
And I'll post the text of it rather than reciting it all here. But it is very pious. And while we don't know for certain, because he would have been like 2 at the time, this piety is kind of a theme in John's life, and might help explain some of his later behavior, even if the context of the piety was a little bit different.
Please tell me, does her letter start with "My dearest Nathaniel"? It's the stereotypical thing, so I'm curious if it starts with it. Cue the like the violin music. Just "My dearest Nathaniel."
Well, close. Loving husband.
Oh, my loving husband, Nathaniel.
Listen to these lines come with my affectionate regards to you, hoping that they will find you in health, though I still continue in a very weak and low condition. I am no better than I was when you left me, but rather worse, and I should be very glad if you could come and see me, for I want to see you.
Oh,
it's sad. It is
sad.
It is kind of like I won't read the entirety of it.
Yeah,
but it is kind of like I hope I get to see you again, but I have a feeling I'm not going to.
Oh man, that's sad. Yeah.
And then it kind of closes off with a lot of even if I don't get to see you again here, I know through the power of Jesus, we'll get to see each other again in heaven. So it is this deeply pious woman, and John Chapman kind of ends up having a very similar energy, even though it's going to go a completely different place. I'm very excited to get to that.
All right, let's go.
So finally, Dad returns in 1780 and marries Lucy Cooley, another local woman, and they have 10 more kids.
Damn. Okay, 10 more kids.
Never acquires any land.
But still no land.
Still no land.
Okay.
In 1792... So at the age of 20, John leaves home, or not even 20, he'd be 18. Yeah, he was 74. So 18 years old. John leaves home, and he's starting to head southwest.
Yes.
Possibly bringing his half-brother Nathaniel along. We do have some evidence. But this is kind of one of the actually earliest stories about Johnny Appleseed that we get is from I can't find it right now. But there's a preacher in Pennsylvania a couple of decades later who's talking about Johnny Appleseed. He's not calling him Johnny Appleseed, but he's already starting to become a bit of a folk hero, traveling over the mountains at this point in time and coming into Pennsylvania. So John's trying to travel, trying to just find his fortune. It's post-Revolutionary War. There's a push out west. And at this point in time, the West is Ohio. That's how we tie this in. Johnny Appleseed is a local legend.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
He primarily functioned in Pennsylvania and Ohio, ending up in kind of the Michigan, Indiana territory. But we actually have there are a lot of orchards here that will at least claim to have their trace back their way to Johnny Appleseed. In Urbana, not too far from here, there is actually the Johnny Appleseed Museum. And they have one of the last trees that is they can directly link it. Like it is a direct descendant of a Johnny Appleseed tree.
It's cool. It's kind of how we claim that flight. We keep saying it's the birthplace of flight when the Wright brothers were just born here. They actually did not set flight here.
I will fight that. I will fight the entirety of North Carolina. Part of it is I played a Wright brother at a historic park. They did all of the inventing here. They just went down to North Carolina because they needed wind.
Fair.
But the minute they no longer needed that wind, they were flying here.
So, all right, I'll give it to you.
And
you played a Wright brother, not me.
Yeah, so we're the birthplace of aviation. North Carolina can be first in flight in the technical sense that is the first place they flied.
Yes.
I will give them that.
There we go.
I actually almost got into a fight with a woman at the historic park. Because she tried to do that. She's like, well, we're the first in flight. I'm like, yeah, but they did all the inventing here.
Oh my God. I would just love to see you as a Wright brother just throw hands with some woman from North Carolina.
100% would.
That would be hilarious.
I'm coming at you with my mustache and my big wheel bike.
That's so...
I got paid to ride a penny farthing.
So cool.
Not paid a lot, but I still got paid to ride a penny farthing. That was pretty awesome.
You still know how you have still ridden more penny farthings than me.
I kind of want to get one. You need a flat terrain. Do not go up or downhill on one of those things. The first time I had to learn how to ride one because they're like, guess what? 2 days there's a 4th of July parade and we want you to ride the penny farthing. and it had just rained a little bit. No treads on that wheel.
Ooh.
And I started going down a hill, and I was like, oh, this is how I die.
Yeah, like this is I'm dying.
I was able to get to the bottom of the hill, got off relatively cleanly. The parade watchers applaud like I did all of that on purpose.
I saw the jackass do penny farthing BMX, and it was pretty funny.
That'd be hilarious.
It was really good.
So, shortly after Jonathan moves out west and starts kind of traveling around, his father starts moving the rest of the family to Ohio to settle on some land out there, and he sets up Johnny with an apprenticeship with an orchardist named Mr. Crawford. So Johnny's starting to get some actual apple training. And a little bit later, finishes his apprenticeship and starts his first nursery south of Warren, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And this kind of gets us into the why apples question.
Yeah, why did he... Yeah, that's another big question that I have.
And so one of the popular concepts right now is basically alcohol evangelist.
Oh, like, yeah, okay.
Like, everyone's like, oh, it's because Johnny loved cider and he wanted to get everybody drunk.
I did hear a comic go like, did you guys hear that Johnny Appleseed was just some wandering booze nomad?
Which, and like, kind of in a certain way, yes, because we know seed apples only really work best for cider. You can eat them, but they're probably just not going to be tasty.
Do you mind if we pause for a second? Apparently, there is food upstairs that I could need to grab, and then I'll come right back down.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be right back. I'm gonna put myself on mute.
Eric just went off to get some food. I'm here alone. You're alone with me. How does it feel to be stuck with your thoughts? Thoughts about the Animorph series and how you probably slept on that. You should have read those as a child. You would be awakened like me. Take the Animorph pill. Get stuck as a hawk. Fall in love with a lady hawk. But not that movie with Matthew Broderick. I'm talking about an actual female hawk. Fall in love with her. And then watch her die. Because that's what happens in the Animorphs. Take the Animorph pill.
Okay, I am back. Okay, please continue. How Johnny Appleseed, why apples?
So yeah, a lot of people, it's really popular right now to be like, oh yeah, the booze evangelist. But I think a more realistic interpretation, understanding, which I got from the book Johnny Appleseed and the American Orchard by the guy whose first name I would have to open the book to remember. William Kerrigan. So that's Johnny Appleseed and the American Orchard, which gives a lot of... I used it a lot for my research for this episode. Pretty good book. Recommend it if you're interested in kind of weird, kind of semi-biography. It's a biography, but because we don't have a ton of information about... We don't have a lot of details about Johnny Appleseed, it also gives a lot of kind of historical context and focuses a lot on kind of like the world of Johnny Appleseed. There were a couple of different laws getting passed in like Pennsylvania, Ohio, and America in general that you were able to get land for fairly cheap. However, you had to show some kind of improvement to it. And one of the ways that you would have an improvement would be building a small log cabin or planting trees, having apple trees on your land. And so John would plant trees. He'd kind of get ahead of the settlers. He would plant trees and then sell the seedlings to the new settlers. So they would have something to show, we've been making improvements to our land, you can't take it away from us.
Oh, okay. So it was kind of a sneaky way of being like, it was a sneaky way of just being like, hey, gotcha, we're actually doing a thing. You can't take this away from us now. Yeah,
and it was a money-making thing. He actually by all accounts, he was actually fairly wealthy by the end of his life.
Weird.
Because it's not the image we get of him, because all of the first-hand accounts also talk about no shoes, ragged clothing, very humble, but he was making money doing this.
Damn.
And then we get into the Y seeds thing, which is very similar to the Y seeds during the early colonial period, which was economic. He could just go behind a cider mill and like search through the scraps that they've thrown out and take those seeds. Okay. And then put those in a sack and then carry them with him. So it was he could only make a profit. There was no like
he was only making profits, baby.
And so he makes this. He sets up this nursery in Warren, Pennsylvania, and in the early 1800s, he lashes 2 canoes together. And this is like something that we're fairly certain actually happened. Lashes 2 canoes together and starts traveling down the Ohio, Muskingum, and Walhonding rivers.
It's a mouthful.
Walhonding.
Yeah.
And then so most of his adult life spent in Ohio, setting up nurseries and selling his apple tree saplings to new settlers.
It's still relevant, people. It's still relevant.
Yeah, no, it was a lot. He was very much an Ohio figure. Until like the mid 1820s, he started moving more kind of northwest and ends up in the Richland, Ashland, Wayne, and Knox County areas in Indiana. Now, some of our earliest accounts of Johnny Appleseed come from a particular source. One of the first actual written accounts that we have of Appleseed during his lifetime, 1817. Reverend John Clowes of St. John's Church in Manchester, England.
Okay.
John Clowes, he helped found what was called the Manchester Society for the Printing, Publishing, and Circulating of the Writings of Emanuel Swedenborg.
Okay. I sense this is going to get sinister.
Have you ever, not sinister, just weird. So now we're getting into the religion of Johnny Appleseed.
So weird. I didn't wait. That's just something I would never even think about.
And this is why whenever like somebody does want to bring up the religious side of Johnny Appleseed, being like, look at this American Christian, I'm like, wait, read about what he thinks. So
okay.
Have you ever heard of Emanuel Swedenborg?
No, I've never heard of him.
Okay. So he was a Swedish, which, considering his name Swedenborg, appropriate.
I would appropriate. Yeah. It's a Swedish name, Swedenborg.
He is I'm always kind of jealous of this period where you could be a theologian, scientist, philosopher, and mystic.
Damn.
All of those things, because you could be a scientist, like, you know how like in comic books when you have a scientist like the Beast is a scientist. He's got a PhD in everything.
Yeah,
any kind of science. That was this time period.
He just has it.
Like Emanuel Swedenborg was a scientist of everything.
That's cool. What a time.
He actually was a very interesting character for multiple reasons. But he actually anticipated on the science side. He anticipated things like the neurons, cerebral cortex, and other anatomical concepts, which wouldn't be confirmed till the next, basically 1-2 centuries down the line. Like he was kind of
his time.
He kind of understood how kind of brain neurons worked, and kind of was anticipating those and talking about how those function.
That's pretty cool.
However, he also had visions.
He was really good at brain stuff. Also, he saw things.
In 1744, Swedenborg traveled to the Netherlands. Around that time, he began having strange dreams and wrote them down in a journal. Swedenborg experienced many dreams and visions, some greatly pleasurable, which was an odd phrase, I thought.
That's a really
others
odd way
highly
to
disturbing.
Talk about it.
The process, which one biographer proposed as cathartic and comparable to the Catholic concept of purgatory, continued for 6 months. So he's having some wild dreams for 6 months.
He's having some really weird purgatory dreams for 6 months.
This biographer also proposes that what Swedenborg was recording in his dream journals was a battle between the love of himself and the love of God. He's like, I love myself, but I also love Jesus.
I love me, but Jesus though. But I love me, but
Jesus. I'm gonna put this in my journal.
Oh man.
during the same period of time, it's 1745, age 57, Swedenborg was dining in a private room at a tavern in London. So he's traveled to London at this point in time.
Okay. Yeah.
By the end of the meal, a darkness fell upon his eyes, and in the room shifted character. Suddenly, he saw a person at a corner of the room telling him, "Do not eat too much." Swedenborg, scared, hurries home, and later that night, the same man appears in his dreams. The man told Swedenborg that he was the Lord, and that he appointed Swedenborg to reveal the spiritual meaning of the Bible, and that he would guide Swedenborg in what to write. That same night, the spiritual world was open to Emanuel Swedenborg. So,
why did
Jeezy Crisps himself comes down from heaven and says, "Hey, maybe not so much cheese.
Stop eating. Stop everything you're doing. Stop eating."
Well, not stop. Just not so much. You can still have some cheese. You can have a little salami as a treat.
You're eating too much cheese.
So actually, a contemporary philosopher, Immanuel Kant.
Oh my God.
There is one story about Immanuel Kant dying because he ate too much cheese, and that's the story I choose to believe in my heart.
I also choose to believe that.
Because Immanuel Kant dying from cheese overdose is the world I want to live in. During these revelations that he's getting from Diet Lord, apparently the Last Judgment has begun in 1757, and it would be completed by the end of the year. And according to one of the books that Swedenborg wrote, The Heavenly Doctrine, the Last Judgment took place not in the physical world, but in the world of spirits, halfway between heaven and hell. And this judgment took place because the Christian church had lost its charity and faith, resulting in a spiritual free will that threatened the equilibrium between heaven and hell in everyone's life. So, apocalypse.
Okay.
Apocalypse now. Apocalypse happened. You just didn't see it because it was in the spirit world.
That sucks, because I would actually would have wanted to see that. Honestly, I would feel a little ripped off.
Well, you can if you're a psychic like Swedenborg.
Okay. Yeah. So, oh shit, saw the apocalypse.
Swedenborg, and so this is also something really interesting to me. So, in addition to anticipating some very big scientific breakthroughs, century in advance, this spirit world aspect of the Swedenborgian philosophy kind of anticipated the spiritualist movement of the 18th or the 19th century. And so, it's a few decades before we get I can't remember the name of the sisters in New York who basically set up the spiritualist movement.
Oh, I know exactly you're talking about, but their name escapes me right now.
The stuff that they bring out is very similar to Swedenborg's spiritual world, which is like still kind of a physical place that exists. It's not this weird ethereal realm. It kind of overlaps with our world, but it's slightly separate.
Yeah. Almost like it's during the big spiritual movement. It was almost definitely correct me if I'm wrong. Anyone listening, or even you, Ian, if I'm wrong about this. But during that movement, it was kind of like, to use a weird term, it was almost like the spirit world was superimposed onto our world. It was just normal people could not see it.
Yeah, you had to have a medium,
like superimposed,
and it was a physical place too.
Yeah, it was a physical plane,
just kind of like on a. So it was like spiritualism is really interesting that way, where it is because it is both a spiritual philosophy, obviously, but because of the obsession with scientific materialism that we were experiencing in the 19th century, they didn't want to make it this weird non-existent existence. It was like, oh no, this is a physical realm. People go there. They have jobs and have houses. Which, house sounds cool. Job, not so much.
I don't want a job when I die. Like I've talked about this before on the podcast, but like I want the afterlife to be like Beetlejuice or like Coco or Book of Life or Corpse Bride. I just want that.
I just want to be vibing.
I just want to be vibing, maybe singing a song about how a woman became a corpse bride with Danny Elfman.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, when I die, I want to chill. I do like in Dante's Paradiso, there's one circle of heaven that is just like a polka. It's like eternal polka party, and I'm like, that sounds pretty good for a while.
Like a Weird Al time. That sounds like Weird Al's heaven there. That sounds dope.
There's a whole tradition of polka masses in like Polish Catholic Church. They have polka masses.
This is where you tell me that that Weird Al is just a polka god.
Weird Al is just polka pope.
Yeah, he's just the polka pope. That's which I'd see. I'd be down.
So tying into something that we know about Johnny Appleseed, Emanuel Swedenborg wrote in one of his books that eating meat is something profane. And so while Swedenborg wasn't a full-blown vegetarian, he'd still eat meat. He still said, this is something wrong. And a major...
Don't do this!
A major aspect of Swedenborgian philosophy was the things you do in this life setting you up for something in the next life. And that he was big on correspondence theory, so that everything that happened in this world had a corresponding reaction and consequence in the spirit world.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, he also talked to planets.
He talked to planets?
Yeah.
Like...
In one book, Earths in the Universe, it stated that he conversed with the spirits from Jupiter, Mars, Mercury, Saturn, Venus, and the moon.
Because the moon's a planet.
Okay, so maybe not so much he wasn't talking to Jupiter, but he was talking to ghosts from Jupiter.
He was talking to space ghosts.
Space alien. He's
alien ghosts.
He's talking to aliens.
He's talking to aliens.
He also, not only did he anticipate spiritualism, he anticipated like the weird early like 20th century everybody who's talking to aliens like aliens were like almost spiritual beings well into like the 60s. People were they would channel aliens.
That was all Heaven's Gate was.
Yeah.
That was all the Heaven's Gate cult was.
There was even a dude who I learned recently who ran for president who was like channeling aliens.
I would have probably still voted for him.
Honestly, a lot of his stuff was pretty cool. Like this, like his platform was cool. Yeah.
Can't be worse than what we currently have.
So from talking to these space ghosts coast to coast.
Thank you.
He concluded that the planets of the solar system are inhabited and that such an enormous undertaking as the universe could not have been created for just one race or on a planet or one heaven. Derived from its properties per planet. Many heavenly societies were also needed to increase the perfection of the angelic heavens and heaven to fill in deficiencies and gaps in other societies. And so he was saying, there's more than one heaven. Because the universe is so big and complex that it couldn't just be made for humans.
Exactly.
Which is there are people who are anti-UFO on religious grounds.
Yeah, there are, like, heavily.
Though in this vein,
so.
I need to send you one of my new favorite art themes is Jesus meeting aliens.
I've seen a couple. I feel like I've seen a couple of them, like where he's reaching, where like they're shaking hands, and it's like the classic Greys.
There's one where like the Greys are really tiny. And there's a cross in the background.
Yeah, I think I've seen it.
Which makes me think that Jesus flew to this planet on a cross because it's human Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, it's human Jesus.
And so I'm like, did he fly there on the cross?
Jesus. He's just like surfing like he's the Silver Surfer on a cross. Where's that comic book? I'll read it.
And so there's a lot of stories about his psychic abilities, though some are contested. He apparently, like, there are stories about him predicting a big fire he was in London, and there was a big fire in the Netherlands that he supposedly reacted to. He was a lifelong bachelor because he would have a heaven wife.
What did please tell me he described what his heaven wife looked like.
Well, he couldn't, but it was he kind of going back to this doctrine of correspondences that he had, that everything in this world had a corresponding element in the spirit world. He also kind of believed that with soulmates. He was like, you have a soulmate and you can meet them in the spirit world, but you have to stay a bachelor here.
Listen, babe. Baby, listen. It was a fun night. I had a great night, but like, I can't commit. I have this heaven wife. She lives in Canada. I just can't do this commitment. And like, you're great. Like, I'm saving myself for heaven wife.
Also,
I know
Jesus says
the
eat
thing,
less cheese.
But also Jesus says less cheese. like this guy is. I'm sad that I'm just learning about this guy now. He is a groovy guy.
He writes a bunch of different books kind of about his different revelations. And so going back pre-introduction of Swedenborg to John Klaus. John Klaus is one of the people who is trying to collect all the writings and publish them so that people can convert to Swedenborgianism. There's no official Swedenborgian church. Like, Swedenborg doesn't himself found a church. However, there are a couple of what they call the New Church or New Church of Jerusalem. There's a couple of different versions of this that pop up that are based on the teachings of Emanuel Swedenborg. So we get some members of the New Church. Famous members. William Blake, who was a poet.
Okay.
Though he later changed his views, he wrote a lot of like very spiritual, mystical type poetry. He was 18th century British poet. Robert Frost.
Really?
Yeah, American poet. Was raised in the New Church, but he left later on.
Okay.
Helen Keller.
No fucking
was
way.
a Swedenborgian.
What?
Yeah, Swedenborgian.
He was a Swedenborgian?
Socialist. Also kind of eugenicist.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it starts cool. Like, she started okay. And then socialist, okay, and then
yeah.
Yeah, damn.
Lisa Oz. You might know her more about her husband, Dr. Oz.
Okay. No. What?
And she apparently introduced him to Swedenborgianism and some other weird holistic medicine, homeopathy kind of stuff. Yeah. So
that sounds like the wife of Dr. Oz. Like, even that just sounds like a person he would marry.
Yeah.
Also, not a real doctor.
And then my personal favorite, a Swedish army officer, Leonard Gyllenhaal.
Is he Jake Gyllenhaal's brother?
Ancestor.
He's Jake Gyllenhaal's ancestor.
Though Jake and Maggie's dad may also be a Swedenborgian, or at least raised Swedenborgian.
Interesting. Wow, whole new religion I had no idea about. I don't want to get down with it. I can't eat as much cheese. I need to keep eating cheese. I can't get down with it.
So going back to the very beginning of this, when I was talking about some of the early writings we have about Johnny Appleseed. So yes, we have January 1817, when probably John's out there in Ohio, boarded up for the winter. We get this letter going out to members of this Swedenborg Society from Reverend John Klaus. There is in the western country of the United States a very extraordinary missionary of the New Jerusalem. A man has appeared who seems to be almost independent of corporal wants and sufferings. He goes barefooted, can sleep anywhere, in house or out of house, and live upon the coarsest and most scanty fare. He has actually thawed the ice with his bare feet. He procures what books he can in the new church, travels into remote settlements, and lends them wherever he can find readers, and sometimes divides a book in 2 or 3 parts for more extensive distribution and usefulness. This man for years past has been in the employment of bringing into cultivation and numberless places in the wilderness small patches, 2 or 3 acres, of ground, and then sowing apple seeds and rearing nurseries. These become valuable as the settlements approximate, and the profits of the whole are intended for the purpose of enabling him to print all the writings of Emanuel Swedenborg and distribute them through the western settlements of the United States.
So that's why they left the whole religion thing out of Johnny Appleseed. They didn't want him to be connected to alien space Jesus.
And it is so we have no idea when he converted. So Swedenborgianism, there were missionaries, but it was also largely pamphlets. Like, they would mail pamphlets out everywhere. So there are 2 Swedenborgian missionaries who show up in Ohio, and they meet Johnny Appleseed. And he's like, fuck yeah, Swedenborg, that's my bro. And they're like,
yeah,
how do you know about Swedenborg?
Yeah, how's this barefooted apple nomad know about Swedenborg?
And so there are some like Kerrigan, who wrote the book that I read, thinks that maybe like because of the prevalence of Swedenborgian literature, that maybe there was just one popped up in one of the trading posts that Chapman was there.
Yeah,
but that is kind of what he's known for a while.
Just being an ambassador, basically being a Jehovah's Witness, but for Swedenborg.
Yeah, and so there were in Ohio. There's a family tradition in a lot of areas where Johnny Appleseed would knock on your door and said, he's like, guess what, motherfuckers? I've got, quote, good news fresh from heaven.
Of course he would say that. Of course.
There's a lot of like oral traditions of Johnny Apple, because he didn't really have much of his own house. He would travel, camp, and then but because he was a cool dude and people knew him, they'd be like, yeah, come stay in our house. And he would like have a lot of fun with the kids and tell them cool stories and like be like, yeah, here's my bare feet, here's my tin pan hat. I almost hung myself on a tree once. That's apparently one of the stories about him, is that like he got caught in a tree, like the fork of a tree, and almost died.
Oh my god. Hey kids, and if you work hard, eat your apples and read this other good book, you could be just like me when you grow up.
Exactly. And the kids would go to bed, and then he'd talk to the parents. He was like, hey, guess what? Heaven wife.
Hey, you could have a heaven. He goes to the guy separately. He's like, you could have like a heaven wife.
You just have to get rid of this one.
You just got to get rid of this one. He's a heaven wife. What's a heaven wife? Listen, it's a heaven wife. Don't worry about it. You're thinking about it. Don't think about it.
There are stories about two little kids asking him why he doesn't have a wife, because just like Swedenborg, Chapman, bachelor for the rest of his life. And the story says that he's like, because I'm going to get 2 angel wives. One will sleep on the right side, one will sleep on the left side, and I'll sleep in the middle.
And if you kids, if you too can have 2 angel wives, hell, you can even have 3 angel wives. You're going to need to get a bigger bed. But you could have 3 angel wives. Just look at this here pamphlet.
But yeah, so like that exact story is up for debate, but considering what we know about Swedenborg, some variation of it, I could 100% believe, where somebody asked Chapman, why don't you get married? And he could just be like, yeah, I'm going to meet my soulmate in heaven. And I'm just going to wait.
I can, as much shit as I will talk about how the American school system is flawed and there's a lot of things left out, and a lot of the things they leave out, I definitely don't agree. I might have not been ready to hear about heaven wives at the age of 5. Like, I'm kind of okay with it being left out until now.
It really did kind of seem like he focused on adults as far as his missionary work went. The children, like by all accounts, everybody who talked about him was like, yeah, we would be left alone with him. He was cool, just the nicest guy. A little weird, a little quiet, but just nice and friendly.
Could you imagine if this actually happened today? Like some dude knocks on your door
like,
and with a pot on his head and just overalls, and he's like, "You hear I got some good news from heaven. There's angel wives, and you also got a bunch of apples now.
Don't eat cheese
in your yard. Don't eat cheese, but you're gonna have a bunch of apples. I didn't consent to having a bunch of apples in my yard, Mister.
Fuck you. That's
fuck you. You getting them now, and also." Look at this book.
And he, like, throughout his life, like, it was kind of like a central focus. And actually, the first, I couldn't find the actual letter, but the first written instance of him being called Johnny Appleseed was in a Swedenborgian letter. Was in a newsletter from the church. And so it's one of those things that I think we skip over, partially because it's weird, but it is just one of those things that it was a huge aspect of his life. And when you learn more about Swedenborgianism, the myths about him in regards to nonviolence, not eating meat, that kind of stuff, like it all makes a little more sense.
It makes sense now because, like, especially when you learn about that because when you learn about it, like, just in the traditional elementary school way, you see him as a folk hero. Like, he was good for good sake. Like, he was just good because he was good, and that was why he was good. To two wives, one of the two angel wives, and he wanted to also just drink
that
cider.
He wanted
like, a lot.
That serum pussy.
You're not going to get better than Mommy Milker.
Imagine you go to heaven to meet your heaven wife, and it's just one of those wheels with eyes. Fear not, husband.
Oh no, it's like the ultimate. It's like, be not afraid, and it's like the Omni Angel with like the 17,000 eyes.
And then
you were like,
head because I am just a head.
There's gotta be some way to fuck it. Like, you just got there like, well,
try hard enough.
Try hard enough. That's what it's all about. If you love them,
but it ends up being like, so some people try to tie the seed thing into religion.
Okay.
And so they'll be like, oh yeah, he had religious reasons against grafting apple trees. But there really is no evidence for that. It's just some people are like, yeah, he had these weird religious beliefs. What if one of those was grafting? Like not being against grafting?
I mean, people will throw the religion card to get out of a lot of things.
Yeah.
But like, I just don't see, I mean, again, I don't know why Jesus would be against smushing two apple roots together. Yeah.
I mean, that isn't that basically the Republican platform? Don't smush your apple roots together.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I think the most logical explanation for seeds is more of he was being thrifty. He was like, I can get these for free.
Yeah.
Why?
He's just like, look at all these free seeds.
And then I don't have to worry about transporting a tree. It is kind of weird because they remove the two of these major contexts, which was the economics and the religion. But then they take the two consequences of the seeds and like the pacifism and wed them together in a weird way.
Yeah. Granted, it's not like I don't remember. I remember him just being mentioned, like, passively. Like, Johnny Appleseed's a thing, and then like we moved on. Then the next day, we never really focused on him. It's not like we had a whole week when we focused on Johnny Appleseed. It was like Johnny Appleseed was the thing. Mm-hmm. So was Daniel Boone, and then Paul Bunyan's a legend, and then next was Betsy. Next, they talked about Betsy Ross the next day. I don't know.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I want to learn more about him now. Though there's also like we don't have a ton of information, but I would love to see if I could gather some like more firsthand accounts. He's going out there doing his missionary work, starts steadily moving northwestern Ohio towards like Hancock, Putnam, Defiance County, and by 1840 he's most active in what was now northeastern Indiana. Though by the end of his life, he held title through purchase or long-term leases to roughly 1,200 acres of land in Ohio and Indiana. So once again, not poor. Like he lived very humbly, and I think that ties back into the Swedenborgian thing, which is like I live humbly now because then in my afterlife I'm going to have a mansion with 5 angel wives.
I'm going to have boats. I'm going to have like a 15-story mansion because it's heaven and nothing's too high.
Yeah.
Nothing's too high up there. And I'm going to have like 15 beds and 20 cars. Because, by the time he gets there, he can have heaven cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to invent the car.
Yeah. I'm going to invent the car when I'm in heaven. That's just what happens.
And then 1845, while tending an orchard in Indiana, Johnny Appleseed contracts pneumonia and dies at a home of a friend's near Fort Wayne, just 6 months shy of his 71st birthday. So he also lived a long-ass time. Wow.
He did live for the time period?
Yeah, like...
People must have just thought he was like a vampire.
Yeah, so like age averages get taken down a lot during that period of time because a lot of people don't survive infancy. But still, 70 years in like mid-1800s, pretty... Like he was
barefoot?
born slightly before Revolutionary War, almost lived to see Civil War.
Yeah, walking barefoot, like barely not having like a stable house, like a roof over his head, and that's impressive.
So he passes away, and he is buried in Fort Wayne, though we don't really know exactly where his grave is. There's the most likely site is a knoll in Fort Wayne's Johnny Appleseed Park, where a small monument has been erected. So we have suspicions about where his grave is, but nobody's 100% sure where.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And he literally, during his life, he's already a legend. There's already stories about Johnny Appleseed being told, and it just kind of explodes from there. And kind of going back to the Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett, Johnny Appleseed dichotomy, these figures who were alive during his lifetime were really... So that, like I said, they're the violent, colonial, native fighting, manly men, and they were really popular during the Jacksonian period of expansion. So we have Andrew Jackson as president. He's kicking out the Cherokee, and the big popular myths of virtue are Boone, Crockett, and that one guy who rode on the river. I can't remember his name, but he would drink.
I can't remember his name either.
He would drink and he'd ride on the river. And Disney made a TV show about him.
Oh,
not Huck Finn. Not Huck Finn. He was kind of in the same. He was an actual like riverboat captain. Mike Fink. He's also a tall tale guy who I want to know more about, because he was basically like, I like to drink and punch people, and I'm got my boat on the Ohio River.
That's the life. That is that guy had it figured out. I like to drink, I like to fight, and I live on my boat.
It was said that he could drink a gallon of whiskey and still shoot the tail off a pig at 90 paces.
Hell yeah. And that's old whiskey, so it was strong.
He could outrun, out-hop, out-jump, throw down, drag out, and lick any man in the county. I'm choosing to believe he means literally lick. He's like, I will lick you.
I'm choosing to believe just full on, just like...
But yeah, Mike. So yeah, we got like Mike Fink, Daniel Boone, David Crockett, and they're big during the Jacksonian period. And while there are stories of Appleseed at this time period, he becomes really big in the Victorian era, when you start getting more gentlemanly virtues, where it is like, no, a gentleman is calm, quiet, celibate. We don't talk about sex, and I guess apples maybe.
Throw apple seeds at people.
But that's when Appleseed starts becoming more of a pop culture figure, is the Victorian era. And that is basically, like, as with a lot of things, the Victorian era like sets up a lot of what we experience now, even if we don't directly realize it. And so that's kind of the stories we get of Johnny Appleseed are from that time period. So that is a lot about Johnny Appleseed, and also Emanuel Swedenborg, because part of it was I just wanted a chance to talk about Emanuel Swedenborg.
That's fair. That's so fucking weird. Like, it's one of those things where I'm glad we talked about it, because I would have never had the goal to like even think about it, and I didn't realize Johnny Appleseed was so fucking weird.
Yeah, it is. Like, it's one of those things where when I like somewhere else, I was like, I heard like he was a Swedenborgian, and I was like, oh, I don't know a ton about Swedenborgianism, but I know it's weird. This is my chance. I'm going to read about Johnny Appleseed and then read about Emanuel Swedenborg. It's currently closed, the Johnny Appleseed Museum in Urbana, because they're renovating their premises. But I want to go there when they open and just get as much information as I can. I wanted to email them when I was researching this episode, but they even their email side, like they're like, we can't take emails right now. We're too busy.
Damn, yeah, that sucks.
But yeah, when they open, I want to go down there and learn, because he's just fascinating. And I want to see what I can find, and it'd be cool to go see one of his trees.
Definitely, it's. I'm glad we opened up the fact that we can do this on the podcast. Like, even if it's not ooky spooky, we can like just do weird stuff, because I'm going to cover. Collectively, I think we should cover those dojo wars with Count Dante that we talked about like way early on, because I just want to dive heavy into that, because that sounds so fucking interesting.
Yeah, I just want because especially when you like Ohio, like we've done mostly obviously spooky stuff, almost exclusively spooky stuff in Ohio, but I know there's going to be weird Ohio too. There's going to be the stuff that's like, this isn't entirely spooky or paranormal, but it's just bizarre and it happened here. And I want to start uncovering more of that stuff.
Yeah.
I could even do an episode on like Fernald feed plant, which is spooky in a conspiratorial way.
Ooh.
But that's the it was a uranium feed plant in Fernald County, like not too far from like the Indiana border, that was like leaking uranium into the air for a very long time. And
oh, fun.
Yeah, nobody knew about it until some high schoolers discovered it. So
oh, great.
Yeah. But yeah, so there's lots of weird stuff we could get into. If there's a weird story you would like us to talk about, send us an email at hauntedbackyardcasts@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram at OHYB pod. Yeah, give us spooky stories that you experienced, that you heard about, that you just think would be interesting to talk about. And thank you for sticking with us after the break that we did not expect. And we're gonna keep on it. I think Eric froze. Eric is frozen. I'll just wrap up the episode by myself. So, thank you again. Reach out if you have any stories, and stay spooky, stay nice. Get Animorph pilled. Bye-bye.